Hello and welcome to the jungle. So I'm in my favourite part of the garden at this time of year. I just love this little greenhouse. I've got it chock full of chilies and the smaller fruited peppers, and they've gone completely nuts. So I thought what I'd do in this video is a little bit of a tour of the undercover spaces. So the greenhouses, the polytunnel, the cold frames. That's where all my favourite stuff is growing right now. So I thought we'd have a little look around and see how it's all doing. As I said, these have gone completely crazy, and I've never seen such vigorous, mad plants in this greenhouse. I mean, we usually get pretty good results from the peppers here. They're good sized plants by the time I get them in their pots, and we get lots of fruit. I don't think we've ever had a miserable year out of this little greenhouse. But on the other hand, stuff has gone really nuts in here. So I've got some really huge Padron peppers as well. Those are just bizarre. I don't know what it is about the peppers this year, but something weird has happened. The conditions must really suit them somehow. Yeah, I think we're going to get a lot of fruit. So let me try and bring the camera in a little bit closer and we'll take a look at some of these. So by the door here I've got some Hungarian Hot Wax. This one is just starting to change colour, but this is generally how I take them while they're still that sort of pale yellow green. And what I should do with these is harvest the larger of these fruits, use them fresh, or then freeze them. Chilies freeze extremely well. They can be used straight from the freezer, and I've got a lot here that I can pick, and the more you pick, the more you're going to get. So these larger size fruits, they're ready. They could be pickled as well. They are delicious when they're pickled. So I'm going to have to do something with these pretty soon and take out, let's say, at least 2/3 of the crop. But you can see in there, they're just immensely productive. And the hot wax pepper is a really good one because it's also an early fruiter. So that's what you're looking for. And if you're in a sort of borderline area, one of the colder spots, shorter season growing conditions, then it is important to get something that will fruit early, and this is one of the really earliest to develop. So it's a great all-round pepper, this one. And there's some big fruit in here too, hiding at the back there. That's just a lovely example. Beautiful pepper. On the other side I've got Dolce di Bergamo. This is a lovely pepper, very sweet. I like them when they are red. I don't want them when they're green, really. They're okay, but I much prefer the flavour of the red peppers. These have started to put on plenty of good sized fruit now. They're a little slower to get going at the beginning, but I don't suppose it'll be too long before these start to turn. These are more or less the full size for these peppers, so I'm not really expecting these to get any bigger, just to start ripening up. This is a new one for me this year. This is Corbaci, and I suspect this is going to be a little bit like the Bergamo pepper I've just shown you, and I really do like that Bergamo pepper. It's excellent, but I've been very impressed with this one. I like the plants. They are fairly compact. They've got a very nice habit to them. Well suited, I think, for growing in this greenhouse. So just judging by the plant so far, I'm very much inclined to grow this again. The fruits are a good size, and this one has been much earlier actually than the Bergamo pepper. The Bergamos have caught up quite a bit, but this had usable sized fruit on it weeks ago, and yeah, this was second only to the hot wax in terms of early fruiting. So I'm really very impressed with this so far. Of course, the most important thing will be the taste, whether it's a pleasant pepper to eat, but so far so good. I've got Friariellos here. These can be used green, but it's probably another one of those that I want to allow to ripen. Down this end I've got the scruffiest of plants. This is Lombardo. The plants are always scruffy, the fruits are scruffy as well, but it's a very nice pepper, and when it gets going it is pretty prolific. It's always the first one to throw up the side shoot, so I don't pinch my peppers out, and this one really doesn't need pinching out. I mean, you can just see how much side shoot has developed around the base of this plant, and they're immensely productive, and you can see that these are starting to ripen. There's a little bit of colour showing on that, and they do turn very quickly, and in fact, looking through there, I appear to have a very funky shaped but pretty much ripe fruit. So, and another there, and this lovely specimen at the front, that is turning pretty well. I don't know, within a week that'll be fully red. These are very nice actually when they're still just a little bit green. They're fine. That would be a nice pepper to throw in a dish and roast in the oven, and that's where quite a lot of these are going to go. They also pickle very well, so yeah, this is a really productive but terribly scruffy fella. The Joe's Long Cayenne are starting to produce some really nice long fruits. I really do like this. This is a nice chili, and one or two of those in a dish are a pleasant level of warmth, and they freeze really well. This is a great chili. I do like it. They're absolutely huge. This is the one variety in the greenhouse here where I think they could be pinched out. You can see that this didn't divide until quite high up, and this is the variety that I did pinch out last year. So I've done a few videos about pinching out of chilies, and I don't generally do it, but I think I might make an exception if I grow this variety again. I'm very likely to grow it again because I do like it, but I might give this a little bit of a pinch because this is really a little bit too long a stem to have here. It would be better if it started to branch out lower down. But just look at the size of this trunk here. It's certainly as fat as my finger. This is immensely powerful plant. I don't really understand what's happened with the peppers this year. They have gone completely mad. Now, I've been keeping an eye on a little bit of aphid in here. I haven't really done anything to it for a while because the ladybirds arrived, and as soon as they appear on the scene, I really like to leave the aphid, and you can see there's a funky looking ladybird there. It's just about to get its lunch. I'm disturbing it, so I'll just leave that alone. So here is one of the Padron peppers that I mentioned earlier, and if somebody showed me this, I would say that there's no way that's a Padron chili. It's just wrong, but it's not wrong. And this is the same seed that I grew from last year. All four plants are doing exactly the same, and in fact I can see towards the back, it's difficult to get the camera in there, there's an even bigger fruit. So this is just not the normal character for this variety, although I know it is exactly the same as I grew last year. It's just enormous. So this is often taken when they're pretty small, this sort of size, fried in olive oil, sprinkled with a bit of salt, eaten with a cold beer, very nice. I've got some sort of more sensible size. I mean, they've got the characteristic sort of ribs and knobbly shape to them. There's definitely nothing wrong with them. This is the size I would expect from sort of a mature fruit, and I very often let these ripen. I know they're typically eaten when green, but I do eat them when they're green, but I do like them when they've ripened. They've got a nice fruity flavour, and it's a fairly mild heat. Every now and then you do get a hotter one, but it's a fairly mild heat, and yeah, quite versatile. Nice pepper. But that's about as big as I would expect to see, and that's the size of the fruits I got last year. Lots of them, but nothing like the fruits I'm getting this time. They're just consistently a good twice the size than I would expect. And well, you can see that, I mean, there's tons of fruit on here, but what are they doing at that size? I have absolutely no idea. Let me see if I can show you a couple of the big ones. That one's a monster. This looks more like a bull's horn pepper. This is, I don't understand how a Padron has produced that size fruit. And round the back we've got another whopper. So if you're familiar with Padron peppers, you'd be forgiven for thinking that I've made some kind of blunder and that's not the right variety, but I'm pretty certain it is. It doesn't match any of the other things I'm growing. It's the same seed as last year. The fruit have all of the right characteristics except for size. But then everything in this greenhouse is huge this year. The plants are just enormous. You can see again the size of these trunks, and it's just as well because they are carrying quite a weight. And indeed, I have propped up a few of these this year. I don't normally have to bother, but I have propped up a few of these with some canes, because even with these massive trunks, they are carrying such a ridiculous load of fruit. And it's normally okay, these peppers are a lot smaller, but at this sort of size and with the quantity they've set, because they are a very productive pepper, then yeah, some of these have had to be propped up. And I've got another cane here that I think I'm going to deploy right now to give this one a little bit of extra support. Yeah, just to stop that from bending too much. So next to the Padron, I've got the Gorria peppers, and again, these are quite productive. These are good sized fruit. I mean, they're not extreme for a Gorria pepper, but they're on the larger end of the spectrum, I would say, most of these. On the plant next door, I've got some of the slightly smaller fruits, and I've even got one that is starting to turn. Well, that is a small fruit, unusually for the greenhouse this year. That's about the smallest fruit on here, and would have been one of the first to set, and that's just starting to turn colour. But there's a ton of fruit in here. So I don't really know what has happened to the pepper plants in here. Conditions should be very similar to last year. I've got the same sort of potting mix. I don't do much liquid feeding, and in fact these haven't had any liquid feed, and they're certainly not going to get any for many weeks yet, and they may not have any for this entire season. I much prefer to feed the soil rather than the plant. So of course, if you've got something in a poor compost and a small pot, liquid feed is essential, simply to provide the nutrients that the plant needs. But if you've got a good sized pot, these are 10-litre pots, and you've got a good rich compost in there, I do have some fish blood and bone. That's a nice slow release fertilizer, but I've got lots of horse compost in there, and a good amount of organic matter in the compost otherwise. So it's a nice rich compost mix, and I've found that for the smaller fruited sweet peppers and also for the chillies, that they don't really need any additional liquid feed. Towards the end of the season they may start to flag a bit, but we're a long way from that, and generally speaking I can get away without any extra feed in this greenhouse. You can see that the growth is lush. All of the new growth coming out is still looking pretty good. So, you know, if they only delivered the fruit that is already set, these would have provided an immense crop, and yeah, they've done really well. But I don't understand quite why there's such an abundance of growth in here, and why some of them, such as the Padron, have delivered such enormous, uncharacteristically large fruit. It's a mystery. I wish I knew what was causing them to grow so well this year, but I'm happy. And there's something really special about this greenhouse. Normally you wouldn't notice it. If you walk into say one of the other greenhouses, or the polytunnel, or you walk into a greenhouse which has got a mixture of tomatoes and peppers, aubergines, something like that, like our others have got, you don't notice the smell of the chili and pepper plants. Of course, there's that wonderful smell you get when you've got tomato plants. It's quite powerful, very distinctive, but actually in here there's also that wonderful aroma. And we tend to leave the door open now when the evenings are pretty warm, but if you get a cold night and we shut it up, and I come down here to open up when the sun's already on it, and they've had a bit of water from the automatic irrigation here, and you open up and there's a wonderful sort of green tropical scent, and I love that. It's a really striking aroma, and it is just like coming into a jungle in here if the door and the window have been shut overnight, and I get down here when the sun's already beating down on it. It's yeah, it's quite an experience. Well, as usual, the old fella is waffling on, so I think what I'll do is split this tour into a couple of parts, and in part 2 I will move on to the polytunnel and the larger greenhouses, and we'll take a look at what's going on in there. So that will be all for this one. Thanks ever so much for watching, and bye for now.